The Virex expanse had been a cartographic ghost story for over 3,000 galactic cycles. A void of dead stars, radiation storms, and unexplained ship disappearances, it was one of the few regions marked in red on every species' star maps. Do not enter. Legends abounded. Some spoke of devouring shadows, others of ancient gods buried in time. None returned with answers. So when a deep space beacon began pulsing from within its heart, the galaxy's powers held their breath, and then turned away. The signal was unmistakable, a pan-galactic SOS frequency older than most civilizations themselves, laced with entropy-stabilized carrier waves to ensure longevity and range. Whatever was sending it had to be ancient, powerful, and in desperate need. Yet the galactic conquered, the Vral ascendancy, and even the cautious Mir Collective unanimously agreed, ignore it. Humanity didn't. The Terran Union, a relatively new player on the galactic stage, was still earning its stripes in diplomacy and warfare, but they had a reputation. Deathworlders, the others called them, reckless, unpredictable, brave to the point of stupidity. To many, that reputation was a stain. To Admiral Corin Dastan, it was a license. Dastan stood aboard the bridge of the TSS Resolute Dawn, flanked by a fleet of 5 heavily armed exploration cruisers. Around him, human officers worked quietly, determinedly, as the glowing edge of the Virex expanse filled the viewport like a roiling cosmic abyss. "This isn't a rescue," said Commander Ina Lorne, his second-in-command. "This is a suicide run." Dastan didn't look away from the swirling black. If it was a trap, they wouldn't be asking for help. They'd be hunting. Something in there is afraid. And if no one else is going to listen, then we will. With that, the order was given. The human fleet pushed forward, vanishing into a sector of space where sensors lied and maps broke. As they crossed the expanse's boundary, every comm buoy and relay behind them went dead. Static flooded their long-range systems. They were cut off from the outside, on their own. Inside the expanse, light bent wrong. Stars were absent. Space seemed thicker. The fleet moved cautiously, triangulating the signal's origin. Along the way, they found wreckage, ships of designs unrecorded by any known archives. Some appeared thousands of years old. Others looked as if they'd been torn apart yesterday. There were no survivors, no bodies, just silence. The signal led them to a planet orbiting a collapsed neutron star, its sky cloaked in permanent electrical storms. The world was dark, but not lifeless. Scattered across its surface were traces of power, artificial structures embedded in jagged terrain. A landing team was assembled. "Scan says breathable atmosphere," reported Ina. "No life signs, no activity, just echoes." "Then let's see what haunts this place," Dastan replied. As the shuttles descended, a sense of unease settled over the crews. Equipment glitched, static whispered through earpieces, and somewhere, buried deep beneath the storm-choked world, the signal kept pulsing. A message in the dark, one no one else dared to answer. But humanity had, and what they were about to uncover would change everything. The planet, designated VX-112, loomed like a dying ember against the void, its storm-choked atmosphere flashing with silent lightning. From orbit, the human fleet's sensors struggled to penetrate the electrical chaos. Interference scrambled scans and corrupted visuals. But one thing was clear. The ancient SOS signal was coming from deep beneath the planet's surface. Admiral Dastan authorized a surface mission. 2 shuttles descended through the turbulent skies, weaving between crimson lightning bolts and hurricane-force winds. The teams aboard were elite. Engineers, xenolinguists, special operations, all briefed for first contact and containment. They were trained for death-world conditions. But not for this. The landing zone was a plateau surrounded by jagged obsidian, ridges pockmarked with metallic spires and collapsed structures, ruins of a civilization far older than Earth. The architecture was alien, yet elegant. Sweeping arcs of metal fused with crystalline arrays, some of it still faintly humming with energy. No signs of battle, no signs of decay. Just Abandonment. Commander Lyra Voss, leading Ground Team Echo, stepped into the darkness of what looked like a transportation hub. Her boots echoed on polished black floors. Vines of unknown biosilicate had crept through the walls like frozen veins. Her team fanned out, sweeping for signs of life or threat. There were none. Still no biosigns, came the report from Echo 2. No heat, no EM emissions, just low-frequency resonance under the surface. Might be geothermal or something else. Hours passed. The ruins stretched for kilometers, massive cityscapes half buried under shifting tectonics and time, and yet everything was too intact, as if the inhabitants had vanished mid-step. Cafeterias still had utensils arranged. Transit pads remained charged. In one room, Voss found a child-sized chair sitting under a blinking projection globe, still displaying planetary weather updates dated 42,000 cycles ago. But no bodies. No signs of violence, just objects left behind as if the people had fled something they could not fight. Then came the first anomaly. Private Sandor Mech, a combat scout, reported hearing faint whispers in the static of his headset, unintelligible phrases, almost like someone speaking backwards. Moments later, he collapsed, clutching his skull, muttering nonsense about mirrors bleeding thoughts. They evacuated him immediately. Medical scans showed no physical damage, but neural activity was spiking erratically, resembling someone reliving memories that weren't theirs. He became unresponsive, eyes wide, pupils locked. While medics worked, another team made a startling discovery. Deep within a central tower, encased in a containment field, was a preserved corpse, non-human, bipedal, delicate in structure, and twisted in grotesque agony. Its face was locked in a scream, not of pain, but pure terror. The containment field was still active, pulsing weakly in the darkness. Nearby, they found a device unlike anything seen before, angular, crystalline, and still operational. It pulsed with the same rhythm as the SOS signal. Could be a data core, Voss muttered, or a warning. Dastan ordered it brought aboard the Resolute Dawn. As the team returned to orbit, lightning tore across the sky again, this time leaving a glowing afterimage that looked disturbingly like a screaming face across the clouds. VX-112 was a graveyard, but it was also something worse, not abandoned, not empty, waiting. Aboard the Resolute Dawn, the artifact recovered from VX-112 was placed under maximum containment. Encased in magnetic shielding and monitored by a rotating team of scientists and AI-driven diagnostics, it pulsed like a heartbeat, slow, steady, and ancient. Its crystalline structure defied material classification, and its internal architecture shifted subtly when not observed directly. Still, the Terran scientists were undeterred. Dr. Eamon Kess, a cognitive archaeologist, theorized the artifact functioned as a memory repository. With cautious optimism, he and his team interfaced it with a dampened quantum relay, using a Terran translation matrix to parse any stored data. What they got wasn't text or sound, but visions, projected into the room as holographic impressions. The artifact unveiled fractured images of the world that once was, VX-112 as it lived. Towering cities humming with energy, pale and graceful beings moving in symbiotic harmony with the environment, a utopia of knowledge and serenity. Then came the fall. The vision shifted to scenes of chaos, people running through crimson-lit streets, eyes glazed, screaming without sound. Black shapes emerged, amorphous shadows that moved with terrifying intent. The pale beings fell one by one, bodies convulsing before rising again, changed. Something had taken them from within. Something unseen, the hollow, whispered Dr. Kess during one playback. They weren't attacked by a species and they were consumed by a concept. Further analysis revealed the hollow were non-physical, entities that infected thought. They entered through memories, replicated consciousness, and hollowed out the soul, leaving behind perfect mimics indistinguishable from the original. These mimics continued life until they'd infiltrated all of society. By the time the planet's leaders realized the truth, it was too late. The SOS wasn't a call for help. It was a quarantine warning, looped on an ancient failsafe system, meant to keep the Hollow contained forever. But the artifact had been activated. Back on the ship, Dr. Kess began acting strangely. He wandered the corridors at odd hours, muttering phrases from the alien memory visions. His personality began to unravel, quiet at first, then unnervingly precise. He knew things no one had told him. He started calling crew members by their first names without ever meeting them. When Commander Lyra Voss confronted him, he simply smiled and said, "You brought me home." Security attempted to restrain him, but Dr. Kess unleashed a psychic shockwave that fried 2 neural implants and left 3 crew unconscious. His body twisted mid-movement, bones bending in ways no human skeleton should. When he was finally subdued, his last words chilled the bridge crew. "I am many." Scans showed no infection vector, no foreign organism, nothing physical, just a spike in neural resonance, a signal copied and replayed like a virus in thought itself. Dastan ordered the artifact sealed and jettisoned, but it was too late. The Hollow had passed the threshold. That night, a destroyer in the fleet, TSS, Red Valor, exploded from within. No external attack, no engine failure. Internal logs showed a single message broadcast on loop before detonation. "You heard the call. Now we hear you." The ghosts of VX-112 weren't just memories. They were alive. And now, they were free. The loss of the TSS Red Valor sent a shockwave through the Terran fleet. In the vast silence of the Virex expanse, the explosion felt louder than anything. Raw, immediate proof that something aboard them was changing. Admiral Dastan didn't need confirmation. He'd seen enough. The Hollow were real, and they were no longer bound to the ruins of VX-112. And now, they were spreading. Immediately, he initiated Protocol Thanatos, a classified Terran directive created for worst-case contamination events. The fleet went into full lockdown. AI processes were rerouted through analog systems, communication was reduced to line-of-sight laser pulses, and no one was permitted to be alone. Neural scans were run every 2 hours. Anyone with irregular patterns was quarantined, no exceptions. Still, the Hollow adapted. They didn't possess in the traditional sense. Instead, they copied, a perfect mental reconstruction of the target's thoughts, memories, and behavior. A person could pass every scan and still be compromised. The only real tell was subtle, an uncanny detachment. Too calm, too perfect. No mistakes. Lieutenant Vey Ilara, a cybernetic strategist, noticed it first. During a routine systems review, she caught a crew member, Ensign Gray, working faster than normal. Too fast. He solved complex data reweaving puzzles in seconds with no error margin. Vey double-checked the math. It wasn't just efficient, it was inhuman. When confronted, Gray's expression didn't change. He simply tilted his head and said, "There is such beauty in your chaos." Then he attacked. Gray's mimic form didn't bleed when shot. Its body broke apart like glass, reshaping mid-motion into elongated limbs and bone-white tendrils. It wasn't just pretending to be human. It had learned from them, used their instincts, mimicked their combat styles, improved them. It took an entire security team to bring it down. The truth became undeniable. The Hollow were information-based predators, parasites that infected consciousness and rode neural patterns like code. Every mind that interacted with the artifact had become a potential transmission node, and humanity, with its networked implants, ship-wide relays, and quantum-linked AIs, was the perfect carrier. Dastan made a grim decision. They couldn't return to known space. Not with the risk of spreading the Hollow beyond containment. The fleet's mission was now one of sacrifice. "We hold the line," Dastan declared to his command staff. "We do not bring this home." But not all agreed. A rogue officer, Commander Reichensaal, believed the Hollow weren't a threat. They were a form of ascension. He led a mutiny aboard the TSS Equinox, severed comms, and jumped into the Expanse's subspace channel. His last, Transmission before vanishing into hyperspace? I have seen the truth. The future is not flesh. It is thought. It is them. The fleet was fracturing. Even as Dastan rallied loyalists and fortified ship protocols, whispers moved between crew. Who could be trusted? Who was still themselves? And deep within the resolute dawn in the sealed vault where the artifact had once been, a faint pulse echoed. The containment had failed. The Hollow weren't just hiding now. They were learning, and soon, they would be ready. The fleet was no longer a sanctuary. It was a war zone of the mind. Admiral Dastan, hardened by decades of interstellar command, had seen ship breaches, psychic incursions, even full-on alien mutinies. But nothing like the Hollow. They didn't. Storm gates or fire plasma cannons, they whispered. They wore familiar faces. They waited until someone cracked just enough to listen. Humanity's greatest strength, its boundless curiosity, had become its vulnerability. Dastan convened a war council on the resolute dawn. Their findings were damning. The Hollow had infected 18% of the fleet. Not through air or blood, but ideas. Anything containing patterns, language, memories, even art, was a vector. The visions from the artifact had acted like a Trojan horse, encoding the Hollow into whoever observed them. But humans, to their credit, are not so easily undone. Dr. Sierra Navarre, a neurophilosopher with a background in mimetic warfare, proposed the impossible. If the Hollow operated as sentient information, living code, then perhaps they could be fought with anti-code, not fire, not bullets, but pure cognitive noise. She called it thought fire, a neural counterpattern designed to be cognitively dissonant, emotionally overwhelming, and utterly unpalatable to any structured consciousness. To humans, it would feel like chaos, clashing, sounds, broken images, recursive paradoxes, confusing, disturbing, but survivable. To the Hollow, it would be poison. The experiment was risky. Faye Ilara volunteered first. She was injected with the Thoughtfire sequence while strapped to a chair surrounded by failsafes. Her brain lit up with activity. Heart rate spiked, eyes dilated, breath shallow. She screamed, not in pain, but in rage. And then, laughter. When she came down, her words chilled the room. I heard them screaming back. The fleet immediately deployed the sequence across command nodes, personal implants, and even intercom stations. It worked. Hollow-possessed crew convulsed under the sonic visual assault, their mimic forms collapsing into twitching static before shattering into crystallized fragments. For the first time, humanity had struck back and won. But victory was far from assured. The Hollow adapted quickly. Their next infiltrators came cloaked in emotional mimicry, projecting sorrow, confusion, fear. They no longer just copied the mind. They studied the heart, a grieving mother's face, a childhood memory, a forgotten song, anything to bypass the defenses. And then came the dreams. Crew began reporting vivid, collective nightmares. Shared hallucinations of black seas where stars whispered secrets and entire planets wept. One helmsman awoke mid-shift and began drawing a star map of systems that didn't exist yet. He said he heard them, chanting coordinates from the edge of the void. The Hollow were no longer just inside the fleet. They were reaching beyond it. Dastan knew what this meant. The Hollow weren't content to survive. They intended to spread, to evolve, to consume thought itself across the stars. But humanity had one last card to play. They would go to the source. Beneath VX-112, scans had picked up a second signal, far below the ruins. Something buried, something sealed long before the SOS even began. A structure immune to the Hollows. Influence, a prison, or perhaps a weapon. Dastan set course. The fleet's remaining ships, battle-worn and haunted, turned back toward the storm world. If this was humanity's last stand, they would meet it where it all began, in the grave of gods and monsters. The resolute dawn led the battered fleet back to VX-112, engines thrumming like the breath of a dying beast. Storms churned across the planet's atmosphere as if the world itself was resisting their return. But Admiral Dastan was beyond hesitation. This wasn't exploration anymore. It was war, and the source of the Hollow's infection, the truth buried deep below the alien ruins, was humanity's only hope of ending it. A joint strike team was assembled, elite Terran Marines, cognitive fire teams equipped with thought fire arrays, and Dr. Sierra Navar leading a corps of neurospecialists. Lieutenant Vey Ilara volunteered again, scarred but unshaken. She had seen the Hollow's thoughts and survived. Now she would see their birthplace. The descent was harrowing. The dig site dropped into an abyss of impossible geometry, walls that bent light, gravity that shifted without warning, whispers that echoed in the mind without sound. The deeper they went, the colder it became, not in temperature, but in emotion. Hope, joy, and memory dimmed with every step. Some soldiers turned back. A few never moved again, lost in fugue states, eyes wide and vacant. Finally, they reached it. The null core. An ancient chamber, sealed in obsidian and void stone, its heart, pulsed with something beyond comprehension. Suspended in the center, frozen in an energy field, was a being, tall, robed, faceless, not dead, not alive, entrapped in a prison of thoughtless silence. Dr. Navar was stunned. This wasn't just a vault, it was a sarcophagus. The Hollow, she realized, weren't born here. They were birthed by it. This being had created the Hollow not as a weapon but as a defense. Long ago it had attempted to erase itself from reality, its knowledge, its presence, even its name. But thought cannot unthink itself. And what lingered, those fragments, had become sentient, parasitic. The Hollow were its echoes. Echoes that wanted to return. And the humans? They had given the echoes form again. The Hollow surged in response, manifesting across the fleet in full fury. Ships went dark. Mimics emerged en masse. Screams echoed across neural comms. Thought fire faltered. The Hollow had evolved beyond dissonance. With time running out, Dastan made his final decision. He would awaken the being. Using Terran neuroamplifiers, Dr. Navar initiated a forced memory loop, syncing her consciousness with the null core. The chamber flooded with light. The being stirred, and then it spoke, not in sound, but in universal regret. You carry the weight of what should not be. I am the first and the last, and I will be again forgotten. In a final act, the entity consumed itself, thought, presence, and echo into pure nullification, a psychic singularity. The Hollow screamed across every mind, a million howling voices unraveling all at once. Then, silence. Across the fleet, Hollow collapsed like shattered illusions. Ships powered down, but life signs stabilized. The storm above VX-112 cleared. It was over. Back aboard the Resolute Dawn, Dastan stood in silence as a field of stars returned to view. Humanity had stared into the abyss, fought something that could not be touched, and emerged scarred, but undefeated. They had answered the call no one else dared, and they made sure no one else ever would. VX-112 was sealed. Forever. The message they left behind was simple. Some cries should never be answered.